Joining me now is Adrian O'Brien. He's the Director of Marketing and Communications at Midnight Sun Mining. Great to see you again, Adrian.
Great to see you too, Mark. Really appreciate you guys bringing me on here.
Well, it's going to be great to get an update on what's happening with the company. Some may be reminded and familiar with the fact that you gave a presentation during our live copper show a couple of months ago. So we'll move it forward here, or at least you will. And just for those who may not be that familiar with the company or who may have missed that presentation, can you give us a brief overview of the company's copper assets in the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt and some of the features of the property, not the least of which is that you're basically surrounded by large-scale projects owned by majors?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to. So it is a really unique situation. We're in an area that is, as you mentioned, dominated by majors. So this is an area that there are very, very few juniors. And we were very fortunate to get in there almost 14 years ago now, 12 or 13 years ago anyways, and get into that area and get key property at a time when copper prices were low, when times were tough, and it was very, very difficult to move these things ahead. And so we managed to get in there and acquire this project, and we've held it through tough copper prices, through tough markets. We've really gone through some difficult times to maintain what we have, and it's paying off. So to explain most easily, we have about 506 square kilometers. It's a very large property package, and it is in the absolute heart of what we call the Domes region. So if you think about Zambia and the Congo, there's an area there that most people call the Zambia-Congo Copperbelt. But there's two regions. There's actually the traditional Zambian-Congo Copperbelt, which runs sort of northwest, southeast. And then there's an area that runs east to west called the Domes region. And we are right in the heart of the Domes region. And really the differentiators for the Domes region, not only is it the second largest copper producing district in the world, but the area itself, if you look at all of the surrounding mines, you have the largest copper mine in Africa, which is First Quantum's Kansanshi mine. That's right beside us. So it's about 6 kilometers away on our east side. And then you have the 4 other largest copper mines in Zambia and DRC, basically surrounding us. So we have First Quantum's Sentinel mine, about 100 kilometers to the west. We have Barrick's Lumwana mine, right beside us on the west side. We have, as I mentioned, First Quantum's Kansanshi mine beside us on the east. And then we have Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula above us to the sort of the northwest. And then we have Tenke, which is owned by China Molybdenum, above us almost directly. Both Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula and Tenke are inside the DRC, whereas the others are inside the Zambian borders. But what differentiates every deposit and every operating mine in that region is the fact that they're all around 1 billion tons. So these are some of the absolute largest copper mines in the world. And we're absolutely surrounded by them. And of course, we're in the right geology and the right location to find another one of these transformational deposits. And so that's, of course, what we're working on doing. And if you look at our property, we have discoveries across the property from north to south, east to west. But our property is essentially broken into 4 pieces, and each one of those is a target for one of these deposits. So, we spend a lot of time looking at how we move those ahead. Do we do them independently? Do we bring in a partner? And of course, we answered that question earlier this year by signing a partnership with Cobalt Metals. So we're doing an earn-in with them. And of course, they're earning into one of the 4 targets on our property. We retained ownership of the other 3, 100% for ourselves. And Cobalt is earning into one called Dumbwa, which is in the southeast corner of our property. And they're spending $15.5 million over the next 4.5 years to explore that property. And of course, all the early stage work has been done. So this is almost a straight drilling program, and super exciting. And then we have another deal, which I'm sure we're going to touch on here, and that's with First Quantum. We're working with them under a collaborative exploration plan for oxide copper, which is near surface mineralization that we're working on. So super exciting on a couple of different fronts, but huge property right in the heart of the top district. We're one of the only juniors there, but we are in the absolute best spot we could possibly be in the top jurisdiction in the world right now to be looking for large copper deposits.
All right, Adrian, we'll circle back to Cobalt in just a second, but let's get to that First Quantum deal. That's a big development since we last talked a couple of months ago, which essentially is that the two companies are looking to potentially have Midnight Sun feed their smelter, which is nearby, and could have Midnight Sun producing in the very near term. So what are the highlights of that arrangement and the significance of this for Midnight Sun?
Absolutely. Well, it is a really unique and fortunate position for us to be in. We wouldn't have this situation if it wasn't for the proximity to the Kansanshi mine. We are located right next door, 5 or 6 kilometers away. There's a haul road that connects us. It's owned by First Quantum. It is an absolutely perfect location for what we're dealing with. But I think to understand why that arrangement has come together, why we're working with First Quantum, you have to understand how First Quantum's Kansanshi mine works. And basically, First Quantum's Kansanshi mine is currently, I think, their flagship. The issues they've run into most recently at Cobre de Panama are well known. And so they've really focused in on Kansanshi. And Kansanshi is amazing. I mean, it's 1 billion tons at 0.66% copper. It's a super impressive deposit, and First Quantum is a great operator. And they basically have 3 circuits at that mine. So they have, of course, a sulfide circuit. These deposits are SEDEX copper deposits. They have a sulfide circuit there, and that's their primary target. But they also have a mixed circuit and an oxide circuit, an SXEW circuit. And so basically, they're taking copper oxides, which is copper material that's located right at surface or near surface, and they have a smelter on site. It's one of the most efficient smelters in the world. And they're producing as a byproduct about 1.2 million tons of sulfuric acid per year. And that sulfuric acid is both an environmental liability, but it's also something that is key for another revenue stream they have. And basically what they do is they use oxides, copper oxides, which are the same as your sulfides, but they're the material that's near surface that's been oxidized. And because the metallurgy is different, they basically take that oxide copper and they use the sulfuric acid and they heap leach it. It does 2 things. It gets rid of the sulfuric acid and it unlocks a new source of copper that they can sell as a byproduct. So that earns a really significant amount of revenue per year. And if I'm not mistaken, it's between 200 million a year and 400 million a year, depending on grade and what they're mining at the time. So it's very significant. And over the last 20 years, they have basically depleted their oxide supply. So they currently are out of oxides. They've been open about that. And they're at a point now where they need a new source of oxides, and there is no other source of oxides in the region outside of Midnight Sun's property. So we're in a really unique position. And of course, throughout our exploration programs over the years, we've located a number of different areas where we have oxide material. So we have oxide material at a property called Kaziba, which is in northwest corner of our property and closest to the Kansanshi mine. We also have a lot of oxide material that we've discovered in drilling down to the south part of our property in an area called Mitu. And so what we've looked at doing and what we've come together with First Quantum to do is collaboratively explore. And that's not a term you typically see a lot, but what it means is First Quantum is putting forth their assets and their think tank, their geological bench strength. They're putting their minds to work on this with us. And what we're doing is basically they're going to contribute geological strength by putting a team forth to work with our team. They're going to help us design a drill plan for Kaziba to start with. They're going to supply assaying at Kansanshi. They're going to do metallurgical work at Kansanshi. And between the 2 teams, the goal is to move the oxide material we have at Kaziba forward as quickly as possible, delineate whatever deposit is there, whether it's 1 million tons or 15 million tons, get that defined, figure out what it looks like and how quickly we can get that to the Kansanshi mine to go through their oxide circuit. And so, we'll basically delineate that target. We've already got a target built out. We're working on the plan as we speak, with drilling to kick off probably in the next few weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and essentially see how quickly we can get Kaziba moving forward. And our hope is that when Kaziba's done, we'll have enough material at Kaziba alone to supply Kansanshi's oxide circuit for the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. And then we have this area down at Mitu, which we're going to start drilling. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to drill that area off. The footprint down there is about 3 to 4 times the size of what we have at Kaziba. And we're going to delineate that and see how much material we have there. And really, at the end of the day, we hope that we'll have enough material to supply Kansanshi for the next 5 to 10 years. And of course, this is a source of near-term cash flow for Midnight Sun if we're successful. So it's a very big prize, and comes with very, very limited capital expenditure for Midnight Sun. I mean, basically, we're paying for drilling, and that's it. First round of drilling at Kazhiba is about $1 million. It's going to be about 150 holes. It's all reverse circulation, and it's all 50 to 60 meters max depth. So it's very shallow, it's very quick, and we think we can have that done in around 4 months, 5 months, somewhere in that range. So very quickly, we would then, assuming success, move forward with permitting. We'll hand that off to First Quantum and let them run with that, and look at how quickly we can get that material over to Kansanshi.
All right, I'm not going to try to pin you down to a specific date. You'd never do that in the first place because it's really conjecture, but that all sounds very exciting, and the possibilities seem quite interesting there. So if everything goes according to plan, is there any sense as to when all of this might happen?
Yeah, so I mean, we're moving forward right now. This is all already underway. We announced this a while ago now. It'd probably be at least 6 weeks ago. So we've been working with First Quantum. We're working on the drill plan right now, and getting this moving forward. But we feel timeline-wise, you know, these things are always a bit of a work in progress. But we feel that we can have something defined at Kazhiba, and be in a position to move material, and keeping in mind to understand that this material is literally right at surface. So anything you do there is going to be basically, it's using an excavator, picking up the material, and literally connecting it to that haul road, which is only a kilometer or so away, and moving it to Kansanshi. So we think that it's possible to move material to Kansanshi as quickly as this time next year.
Now, on the financing side, Adrian, another new development is the fact that Midnight Sun recently raised $10 million in a non-brokered private placement, of which Red Cloud Securities was one of the finders. And this was a deal that was upsized from 3.3 million. So I'm just curious, and I think investors would be curious as well, to just get a little snapshot behind the curtain in terms of what the company called overwhelming demand. What does that say about interest in the company and its projects, and sentiment in general in the sector? Can you give us a snapshot, a glimpse, or some anecdotes as to the demand for that private placement?
Absolutely. You know, when we set out to raise this amount of money, of course, this is money that's allocated to drilling. So the plan here was to put together the money that we needed to carry out the drilling at both Kazhiba and Me2 under this deal with First Quantum. And so we set out with a goal of getting $3 to $4 million. And that was minimal. You know, we went there, we were being realistic. Markets had been very tough. We really weren't sure what the reception was going to be like. We knew there was a lot of interest in our projects. We knew there was a lot of buzz around the Cobalt deal that we had announced a couple of months prior. But it was tough to get a sense of what the interest in financing was going to be like right now. And of course, you hear stories of people having a really tough time raising money. So we went out, of course, with the help of Red Cloud, and we went out with a goal of getting $3 to $4 million, would give us more than enough money for drilling at Kazhiba. It would give us money for operations and marketing, and money to get started at Me2, and maybe with a goal of doing a second tranche a little further down the road. And what we found was that, of course, through Red Cloud, they brought a lot of institutional investors to the table. And this is the first time that Midnight Sun has been an institutionalized story. So we now have support from some of the bigger funds and institutions in Canada, which is really key. And it was a goal of ours going into this. So that was a huge accomplishment for us. And once we had that going, what we found was that the interest was, as I said, overwhelming. You know, 3 quickly became 4, 4 quickly became 5, 5 quickly became 6. You know, and in a perfect world, 7 to 10 million was the ideal number. It's a number we had been kicking around for months. We knew that that would give us enough funding to drill at both Kazhiba and Me2 without stopping, without any hesitation, and to be able to get out there and really attack that. But what we didn't expect was the copper market to pick up right when we announced the financing. Of course, a nice move in the copper price. You know, the interest in copper in general right now in the market is, you know, it's definitely one of the most sought after metals. And in terms of projects, people are really looking for those. But I think also there's very few companies that have near-term production potential. Even companies that are moving forward right now with production-based or development stage projects, they still have a 5 to 10 year runway ahead of them. All of a sudden, we're in a position with First Quantum And of course, we announced that prior to the financing, that we were working with them on this collaborative exploration plan. We could be 10, 12 months towards moving some of this material over to Kansanshi. And so I think that was, such an exciting deal around cobalt, but all of a sudden you have this icing on the cake situation where you have a potential near-term production situation that could mean serious near-term cash flow for us. And so that seemed to really get the market excited. And, we had a huge response from retail investors, institutions, brokerage firms, a bit of everything. And so at the end of the day, we had probably interest for closer to 12 to 13 million. We made the decision that 10 was the right number and we cut it off there. And so 10 million is what we settled at, and just overwhelming demand across the board. So it was really exciting and so satisfying to see so much interest in this project. But again, the right place, the right time. And I always say in all of my presentations, timing is everything in what we do. In this particular situation, the timing couldn't have been better.
All right. Well, thank you for that perspective, Adrian. Let's get back to this earn-in agreement with Copperbelt Metals, which is an interesting firm because in part they're backed by billionaires, including Bill Gates, but also they have these AI capabilities, which you've said can advance an exploration project at about 3 to 4 times the pace of a conventional project. So can you sort of give us a glimpse in terms of the advantages of this arrangement with Copperbelt Metals?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the deal with Copperbelt Metals. We received a lot of interest over the last, let's call it 18 months with our project. Different groups that came to the table, different offers that were thrown our way. But the reality was for us, when we began talking to Copperbelt, we knew very quickly that they were the right group. They were the right group for a couple of reasons. Number one, we wanted to take our property, as I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion here, our property is really broken up into 4 pieces, and each of those 4 pieces has equal potential to become one of these large generational deposits, billion-ton deposit, if you will, in Zambia. We really wanted a group that would work with us on one piece, allow us to maintain all that blue sky and all that opportunity for our shareholders by keeping the other targets to ourselves, at least at this point, fairly early in the development of this project. But Copperbelt, of course, as you mentioned, the backers that they have are literally the top Silicon Valley investors. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson, and some of these folks. I mean, really top notch, all through Bill Gates' fund, which is the Breakthrough Energy Ventures Fund. But they also have the Canadian Pension Plan. They've got Anderson Horowitz. They've got T. Rowe Price. I mean, they have the who's who of funders behind them. But I think for us, it goes a lot further than that. It's really about the team. And when you look at Copperbelt, there's 2 different facets to this. Number one, as you mentioned, the AI technology. What they're doing is absolutely bleeding edge. They are at the absolute forefront. And I believe, I sort of feel like I represent sort of the new guard in the exploration industry, and maybe a slightly younger generation of people that are out there doing what we do. And what I see with Copperbelt is I see the future of mining and exploration. I see that they're doing things that very few others are doing. And this is the way forward. And so in order to explain their AI, and I'm certainly not an expert anywhere near the level that they are, but the simple way to explain it is that by getting as much data as possible, and that could be more assays, more downhole surveys, assaying for metals that you're not necessarily looking for, they can accomplish more with fewer drill holes than we can with just traditional geoscience. And they're utilizing novel technology and AI to analyze data at every stage of the process of exploring the property. And so that can be historic data sets, it can be new data sets, it can be downhole surveys, it can be assays from surface. And basically they're taking all of that data and they're streamlining the approach at every single step. So that really speeds things up. And actually I just presented in Washington, D.C. with Daniel Enderton from Copperbelt. And Daniel used some really great slides, and what they showed was a side-by-side view of different targets and how they can screen out targets that are false, targets that we would otherwise waste time on. And they can use that AI to streamline and simplify their targets to where they know that they're looking at the ones that really are worthwhile, that they deem high potential. And so they're not wasting a lot of time on a lot of noise. They're getting it right down to the ones that are most important. They can knock out the others at an early stage and move forward. And so, that's kind of how the AI plays in. But you don't want to overlook the geoscience aspect of this either. And Copperbelt has put together absolutely the best team I've ever seen. They have something like 200 PhD geoscientists on staff, 65 allocated just to their copper projects. It's unbelievable. And when you look particularly at copper, they have brought on a fellow that we all know here at Midnight Sun named David Broughton. David Broughton is one of the top geologists in the world, particularly for SEDEX copper. David worked at Kansanshi, of course, again, First Quantum's Kansanshi mine right next door to us. Led the development team at Kansanshi. He also worked for Ivanhoe at Kamoa-Kakula, and you don't want to overlook the size of Kamoa-Kakula. I think today it's 1.4 billion tons at close to 3% copper. And David was credited with that discovery, and of course did the development work there as well. So he would arguably be one of the absolute top geologists in the world for this. He's a top tier talent, and David is running the program. So he's built a team, people that he thinks are the best at what they do. And David's leading the way. And David, I love to use this anecdote, and actually Daniel used it on stage in Washington, D.C., that David was in contact with us 7 or 8 years ago. And over lunch, David shared with us that he knew a lot about our project and that he couldn't understand how we ended up with the project in such a great place and in an area dominated by majors. But he made it very clear to our CEO that whatever we did, we should make sure we did not lose this property because it was tremendously valuable and super important. And that gave us the inspiration to stick with it in tough times, and we did. And here we are 7 or 8 years later. This has come full circle, and David is now running the project at Dumbwa. And Dumbwa is amazing. 20-kilometer long soil anomaly, peaks at 0.73% copper. The average mine in the area is 0.59% copper. So you actually have ore grade in soil. We have vegetation kill zones, which you only see associated with super high grade copper deposits in the region. All the signs are there. And Copperbelt's excited, David's excited. We're beyond excited to have all of these groups behind us. And, what Copperbelt is doing is hopefully going to lead us to a big success here at Dumbwa.
Well, those connections with Copperbelt Metals and Mr. Broughton certainly are fascinating catalysts for the company and aspects which go into the whole investment case of Midnight Sun. As we wrap it up here, if you could summarize against the backdrop of what consensus believes to be a long-term bullish picture for copper going out 10 years or more, against that landscape, just check off the boxes if you could in terms of the investment case for Midnight Sun.
For sure. So I always like to say that every project has a list of ingredients you need, right? You need location, you need grade, you need scale, you need scalability. Doesn't hurt to be surrounded by majors. You want to be in the right jurisdiction and certainly need to be looking for a metal that is the right metal at the time. The thesis for copper is well known. For electrification, this is going to be driven by demand for manufacturing. The demand for copper, I think we've all seen enough in the news about this now to understand what's going on. There is not enough copper in the world. There are not enough new discoveries. The discoveries that are being made are typically deposits that are deep, that are extremely expensive, that are in tough jurisdictions. And so there are very few places in the world where you can find deposits that are big enough to make a real impact on that deficit of copper, and projects that can be developed quickly enough that they can actually come into the market at a time when that demand is peaking. And so if you look at the global landscape, where do you want to be? Well, I think it would be tough to argue that there's any better jurisdiction right now than Zambia. And certainly if you want to drill that down further, the Domes region of Zambia. The prize is big. If you're looking for a deposit in this area, you're looking for billion-ton deposits. If you find a deposit there, if you're successful, this is something that can have a material impact on the copper production scenario globally and can be moved forward very quick. So, you need to find projects in the right place. We are in the right place, arguably the best spot in the world. Do we have an opportunity to find something big? We do, and we're funded. Not only are we funded by way of the financing we just completed, but through this deal we have with Copperbelt Metals to explore for one of these large deposits at Dumbwa. And then now we have our deal with First Quantum. So we're working going forward on this plan to define resources of oxide copper that can go to Kansanshi. That's a near-term production scenario that could provide near-term cash flow to Midnight Sun that is really significant, putting us in a position where we never need to raise money again. We can move our other 3 SEDEX targets forward without going back to the market, without any further dilution. And all of this is happening very quickly. So, I think you kind of have the best of both worlds. And I think that's one of those things that people say a lot in our business, and it's becomes a bit of a buzz phrase. But the reality is huge exploration potential that's funded and moving forward. We're going to have 2 drill programs going on simultaneously over the next 4 to 6 weeks and running on an ongoing basis. So lots of news flow, lots of excitement. But really, this is it's kind of an ideal scenario as far as a copper exploration project. So we're super excited, and that's the thesis for Midnight Sun.
All right, very thorough, very informative, Adrian, and exciting as well for investors to consider the case here for Midnight Sun Mining. Thanks so much for doing this once again, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's Adrian O'Brien, Director of Marketing and Communications at Midnight Sun Mining. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again.